Part 3 of the Little Turd.
Who's been over there and flown the Joint Strike Fighter in a simulator has been seeing a model which is not yet verified.
If they thought they were flying a verified Joint Strike Fighter, that was an accurate replication of the experience, they were wrong.
It would appear that they're wrong, yes.
As an Australian Senate committee prepares to once again examine the Joint Strike Fighter program, Background Briefing has obtained an invitation being sent around to MPs. It's from Lockheed Martin, the maker of the JSF, offering senators the chance to fly a special JSF cockpit demonstrator. The accuracy of that term aside, committee member Senator Peter Whish-Wilson says he's not too keen.
No doubt it'll be a hell of a joyride for most people.
Ahead of the committee's hearings, Green Senator Peter Whish-Wilson wants Australia to rethink its commitment to the JSF.
Lockheed Martin, my understanding is they went to great lengths to lobby against the Senate inquiry happening. Certainly Nick Xenophon phoned my office and said, I've got a small family company in my office and they won't leave. And I said, who are they? And he said, Lockheed Martin.
Senator Xenophon has confirmed the conversation took place and says it was a tongue-in-cheek moment. This is a crucial time for Australian defence. We've got a new defence white paper, a new defence minister, and a new-ish Prime Minister committed to increase defence spending to 2% of GDP. US top brass was in town recently. The head of the office managing the Joint Strike Fighter program, US Lieutenant General Christopher Bogdan. Background Briefing phoned in to his press conference. We asked him why, after so many years, there was still no proper simulation to fully check out what the JSF can do in flight.
They are right. We're late with it. That's on me, okay? I got to get it moving. I got to get it fixed. I got to get it done. But it's late because it's really hard to do. And that's about the best answer I can give you.
Lieutenant General Chris Bogdan did not dispute any of the concerns the test report raised about the helmet, the overheating, the software, or the simulation.
It lays out issues and problems that we have on the program, which are accurate, but instead of putting a comma after that, it puts a period at the end of the sentence, where what I would like to do is put a comma there and tell you, okay, we have that problem, but it's either fixed, or we're in the process of fixing it, or we're in the process of implementing the fix already.
But he said he had all the data, and what it showed gave him confidence.
The critics have no data to base their opinions on. They have no data. I have the data. I have the pilots who are flying the airplane. Here's what I will tell you. There is not an airplane in the world today, anywhere, that if put up against an F-35 in an air-to-air environment, we see them first, shoot them first, and kill them first. Period. Dot.
Background Briefing wanted to know, of the latest Australian order of 58 JSFs, how many were actually in production.
Your airplane started being built in 2015, maybe a little earlier than 2015.
The RAAF's Air Vice Marshal Diebel, the Australian program manager for the Joint Strike Fighter, jumped in to assist.
Not all of those aircraft are in production, so the LRIP 10 aircraft and LRIP 11 will be long lead activity associated with those aircraft being produced.
So how many of those 58 approved for purchase in 2014 are currently in production?
I would tell you that there's probably somewhere between 0 and 16.
Yeah, there'll be somewhere between 0 and 16 is General Bogdan's comment. And again, we do track them down the production line, but again, I can't give you a definitive answer, on exactly where they are.
Thank you, Air Vice Marshal. So you don't know how many of those 58 aircraft are currently in production?
No more than 16.
No more than 16 aircraft.
But you're not sure how many?
I'm not sure. We will get you the answer specifically about that. We'll take that on notice.
So the answer is somewhere between 0 and 16, either none or some. At the end of the press conference, Air Vice Marshal Diebel said 8 might be beginning production soon.
Sarah, I'd just like to clarify the point around the production line. So the answer is that they're component parts at the moment that are coming globally, and they're going to be mated together to make up a aircraft in the immediate future. It's not as simple as saying, how many aircraft are in there.
You can read Defence Media's response to our questions on our website. Lockheed Martin cancelled a scheduled interview with Background Briefing after that press conference. The number of aircraft in production is important because aircraft made while JSF testing is still incomplete have more problems. Dr. Keith Joyner wants our buy halted until testing is complete.
The Senate should put a dirty great big stop work order on any sign-up to any production aircraft that we've not already committed to.
Dr. Keith Joyner says the biggest risk confronting Australia is that we may end up with 72 JSFs which are faulty and not fit for purpose.
It's just the fact that we might end up with 72 of them and then find out what they can't do or can do.
Dr. Joyner says at that stage we can't fix it.
It's a little bit beyond what Australia is capable of, and that's the real risk.
Now Dr. Joyner wants to halt the buy, send Australian engineers to the US to participate and help finish the testing, fly alternatives in the meantime, and at the end of it, be prepared to dump the Joint Strike Fighter.
Get some Australian testers over there to help out, and if necessary, get out. That's my view. We don't do the US any favours when we appear such a soft touch. This is not the war against ISIS where we need to show allegiance and a determination to the enemy. It's an acquisition involving a sole-sourced major multinational corporation that is consistently undervaluing the test program, and a US program office that will not or cannot stand up to them. And our defence is mixing up its strategies here, and it needs to put some pressure back on the program like Canada has. So we need to get a little bit of spine back here and stand up to the company.
Canada bought into the JSF program at the same time as Australia in 2002, eventually ordering 65 planes. But at the end of last year, the new Canadian government disregarded dire warnings that the JSF program was too big to fail. They dumped it and announced they would instead hold an open tender for their new jets. The Canadian, who literally signed his country up to the JSF program in the first place, is relieved that Canada has now dumped it.
I'm very positive about it. I think it was the right thing to do. I'm surprised that the previous government continued to stick with the same mantra, even though they knew that there was no basis for it any longer. I'm also a strong believer that competition saves money. There's a lot of anecdotal information to say that you can save up to 20%.
Alan Williams is the former Canadian Assistant Deputy Minister for Defence Materiel. He says Canada may have to cut its losses.
It's a sunk cost, and I think you just move on.
Rather than throw good money after bad.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not just the money thing. As I said, the most important thing is getting what our men and women in the military need.
In 2002, when we first bought a stake in the JSF, then Defence Minister Robert Hill estimated how much each jet would cost Australia.
It is believed to be in the vicinity of about 40 million US per aircraft.
Now, 14 years later, the government says it's 90 million US per jet. But Australia is set to pay almost $18 billion Australian in total for all costs associated with its Joint Strike Fighter program. Minus RAAF base upgrades, that comes to more than 160 million US per jet. And Keith Joyner says that figure could still rise.
There's no warranties in the way that we go into this. It's whatever it costs us in the future, it costs us in the future. How can we be so sure that it's only $17.7 billion if we haven't done the testing that dictates how many deficiencies need to be corrected?
The total cost of more than $17 billion Australian doesn't include maintenance costs over their lifetime. Australia doesn't even have an estimate for that, but the US does. Mike Sullivan from the Government Accountability Office.
The estimate is still coming in at really close to $1 trillion US.
Retired Wing Commander Chris Mills says the JSF will cost Australia dearly.
Well, this is what I say about the Joint Strike Fighter. You pay for it 5 times. You pay the capital costs, you pay the operating costs, you then pay the opportunity costs of what you could have bought with the money, you pay for it diplomatically because having a good capable military changes the calculus in international relationships, and finally, if push comes to shove, when your Air Force is defeated, you can lose sovereignty, and that is the ultimate price to pay.
The Defence Minister Maurice Payne, Lockheed Martin and former Prime Minister John Howard all declined an interview with Background Briefing. Background Briefing's coordinating producer is Linda McGuinness. Research by Jess Hill and Tim Roxburgh. Technical production by Andrei Shabanov. Our executive producer is Wendy Carlisle, and I'm Sarah Dingle.
Big bucks. Next week.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. So what they're talking about is an overpriced, underperforming turkey, the little turd. And we're getting stuck with it because we've bought it off the drawing board. The American Air Force has bought it off the drawing board, and sometimes, very occasionally, they've bought stuff off the drawing board which has worked out quite well for them. To my knowledge, the very first aeroplane that the United States Army Air Corps purchased off the drawing board was the Boeing B-29, the one which not only dropped the atom bombs, but also that was the aeroplane which achieved the world's worst ever terror bombing raid. 87,793 people killed. March the 9th, 1945, Tokyo. However, that was a success story in terms of buying an aeroplane off the drawing board, working the bugs out of it, and actually having it perform pretty well in the field. But the B-29 was not designed for naval use and taking off on carriers, and one of the functions of this F-35 thingy is that it's got a vertical takeoff and landing variant for naval and marine use. And the first time Australia bought a carrier fighter from America to use for its Air Force in frontline combat was the Brewster Buffalo, which greatly contributed to the loss of Malaya to the Imperial Japanese forces in 1942. 41, I guess. They hit Malaya at the same time they hit Pearl Harbor. But yeah, America is quite capable of building completely hopeless aeroplanes and selling them to their allies with a big grin and a shiny tin of polish and a book of instructions to tell you all the things that the aeroplane should be capable of, but in practice they turn out not to be so. What this sort of reminds me of is the saying that a camel is a horse designed by a committee. And this thing's an attempt to get one aeroplane to do too many things, and therefore it's no bloody good at anything. It's a bit like trying to design a knee joint that will function as an arsehole. And this thing's neither your arsehole nor your elbow. It's just a piece of shit. That's probably why they call it the little turd. Anyway, that's Background Briefing. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.